How to write a literary analysis essay that's focused on plot. The first thing you'll need to do for this assignment is choose the story you want to write on, either The Real Thing, Desiree's Baby, or Neighbor Rossiki. Now, you should not choose the story that you were assigned for your group project. After you've chosen your story, focus in on the conflict. So ask yourself these first 4 questions. What is the main conflict the protagonist or the main character must overcome? Is this conflict internal or external? And by that, I mean, is the conflict mainly in the character's head or their conscience or emotions? Or is this conflict with someone outside of themselves or society at large? So, what is causing the conflict? The third question, how does the protagonist respond to the conflict? And this is an important question to really sit down and think about. Fourth, what stands in the protagonist's way? What I recommend doing is taking a few minutes and answering these 4 questions. So maybe pause this video and then come back. And after you've answered them for yourselves, then go on to this last question, which is really the most important one for you to answer when thinking about this paper, which is what do you find interesting about this conflict? So go ahead and take a few minutes and go through these questions and come back when you're done. So now that you've answered this question of what do you find interesting about this conflict, you can now move on to crafting your thesis statement. So this template right here gives you an example of what a thesis for a literary analysis essay might look like. You can say, in the title of this short story, the main character faces the challenge of blank. This conflict is important because it shows us blank about the main character. All right, so once you've had your thesis, then you need to look through the text and find at least 3 places that demonstrate that this conflict that you've pointed out in the thesis exists in the story, and 2, show why this conflict is interesting. Okay, so can these places in the text to help you prove that the conflict exists and that this is an interesting conflict that we should care about? All right, you should list out the 3 points, and this will kind of form the basis for your outline of the essay. So this is how the essay would look. You'd have your cover page in APA style, your introduction paragraph, and then at least 1, 2, 3 body paragraphs corresponding with the 3 points that you had right here. And of course, a conclusion and a reference page for our textbook or the online source where you read your plot analysis. You do not need to include additional sources in this essay. However, if one will help you prove your point, you may use an additional source. Now, a couple quick tips for this essay. You may feel the need to summarize the entire plot or story of the essay, and you don't need to include everything, but if you need it, you can put a 2 to 4 sentence summary of the short story in your introduction paragraph right here. And that summary should be very concise and focused on the elements of the story that you will need to prove in your remaining body paragraphs. Okay, so it's an isolated summary. Now, I want to make it clear, you do not want to turn this whole essay into a summary of the story. And you can avoid doing this by continuously explaining what the plot reveals to us about the main character. All right, so those are my tips for writing this essay. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me.